Let's get this show on the
Put
road.
in the back here,
Let me tell you a little bit about Veracode first. Veracode is the leading provider of application security software. That means that we're essentially able to take a software application, a website, understand where it could be breached, and then keep that breach from happening. It's an important problem that we're solving. I want to tell you a little bit more about that problem and a little bit about my problems and where you might be able to help me, because I look at you as my potential heroes in the audience. Why is that? This is Veracode's revenue going back to 2011. In 2010, we did 10 million in revenue. Right now, we're right around 100. We're right around 100. But I have two problems as a CEO. And Andrew mentioned I've been a CEO. This is my fourth time of little bitty companies with no revenue to 3.2 billion in revenue. And I've always had two problems, regardless of size or stage. Lack of revenue and all the other problems. And you can help me with the first one. It is by far the biggest problem we have. It's the biggest problem you have with your portfolio companies, I'm sure. And I want to describe it a little bit for you. First, let's just talk about why our company is important. And Mark Andreessen, the venture capitalist, wrote a few years ago that software is eating the world. In fact, it has eaten the world. We are completely and inextricably reliant upon software to compete. Every company in the world looks up today in 2016, and at some level they are in fact a software company. There were 83 million applications in use at the end of last year, 2015. It's expected that by the end of this year, there'll be 140 million applications in use in business. The reason what Veracode does is important is none of those applications, or actually a minuscule amount of those applications, were actually developed with security in mind. And if you think about the number of applications that exist in the world, first of all, there's an application, I swear this is true, that will tell you the best time to go to the bathroom during a movie. There's literally an application for everything. But they're brought to market very quickly, and they're brought to market with features, functionality, and revenue in mind, not with security in mind. And Veracode does more to button those applications up against breach than any other company. So it's an important problem. But here's the challenge. We're a $100 million company. Our customer base is the largest corporations in the world. So think about GE, Boeing, JP Morgan, Shell, the biggest companies in the world, and their software providers. So we work with both of them to make sure that they're more secure and effective, right, so that they can go faster. We have about 200 of the global 2,000. That's our target market. And the most we have in any one of those customers is about 10% of their applications. But keep in mind, we get about $5 million out of our biggest accounts. So they're big, big, meaty accounts. But we're less than 1% penetrated. Wellington, who's the most prominent investor in all of investing, right, public company investing, invested in our company last August on the notion that, listen, if you're in 200 of the global 2,000 and you're only in 10% of their applications, you're less than 1% penetrated, and every company is becoming a software company. All of these programs were written, all these websites were developed without security in mind. You do it better than anybody else. Why aren't you growing faster? That is by far the biggest question I am asked by investors, potential employees, because when we describe what we do, it's like, why aren't you growing faster? Well, it's hard, and that's where you can help me. And some of you already do. Sorry, the other thing you should know is that all of the breaches you read about, most of them come through websites. If any one of you want to test me on this, I'll have you sign a release, because it would otherwise be a criminal act and we wouldn't do that. But if you sign the release, I'll show you your intellectual property within a couple of hours. We'll just attack your website and show you your information. It's lickety-split to get in. It's that easy. So, how do we think about solving this problem? We have to grow faster. We're a $100 million company. Our primary competitors, by the way, are HP and IBM. So they have enormous account coverage in the Global 2000 that we serve. They can cover the account much more readily. They have 100,000 salespeople. We've got 100 salespeople. So how we think about doing that? We drive thought leadership in the space. We have very detailed thinking about the Internet of Things, even though we don't yet secure the Internet of Things, because we're really focused on today's problems, which are the websites that run the world aren't secure. By the way, if some smarty pants brings up the Internet of Things in a cocktail conversation, just look back at him, dead in the eye. This is probably a him if he's that obnoxious. Just look him dead in the eye and say, it's not about the Internet, it's about the things. I've been doing that for a year and it works. I don't know what I'm saying, but it works. But we talk about the Internet of Things and what it's going to mean to secure the Internet of Things. We talk about security in real time, even though that technology doesn't yet exist today. We also make sure that we mightily use the fact that Boeing, Deutsche Bank, GE, some of the big names I dropped before, they deeply believe in what we do. Because the problem that you help solve, the problem that we try to help solve, is to help you grow faster. That's why I was interested in talking to you today. If you look at the problems in the world today, you look at the stock market, you look at this stupid presidential election that's going on, it's basically people are struggling with the fact that we're not growing fast enough. Right? And what we do from a security perspective is make sure you can clear things for takeoff so you can lean in on technology more aggressively and therefore grow faster. What you do as professionals is help people like me understand how we can move the top line and get it going faster, and that's deeply important. But one of the things that we really rely on are those great customers like Pablo's company, American Express, who is a customer, to talk on our behalf to other prospects. And we differentiate. We make sure that there's an approach to technology that makes it easy for people to understand and grapple with this problem. For instance, we can tell you if you're a big company like American Express where all your websites are, and we can do that in a day. If there's a sudden new attack that hits, like you see Heartbleed over there, we can tell you where you're running that vulnerability and help you plug it up very quickly. And we bring that to the market in a way that no other company does. Because while HP and IBM are very strong companies and have great account coverage, they don't have 500 people whose sole purpose is to be experts in application security, where we understand this better than anybody else and use a combination of people, process, and technology in a way that they just can't match with a line item of SKUs. We're also looking to broaden the category. There's about $1 billion spent on application security today. And when you think about approaching your customers, you're trying to help them grow their top line. Well, there's $200 billion spent on software development. There's $80 billion spent on IT security products. So to the extent that we can tailor that spend and begin to shape it towards our category, it's an underserved category. Because the majority of attacks occur at the website, but the spend is going elsewhere. And nobody buys a security technology to buy a security technology. They're looking to prevent breach. So we want to shape that spend our way. And some of the tools that we use to do this, I saw that one of the companies that was presenting here is Demandbase. We focus on the Global 2000. They help us pinpoint within those accounts how to nurture the account through the selling cycle. When we go to the sales approach, I saw Corporate Visions was in the other room. Our sales force is equipped with their capability of telling a story in a way that the customer understands. But the key for us is to shape the category our way, reinforce the fact that we are the leaders, and convert what is essentially a level of ignorance about the problem today to understanding their negligence, right? So now I've put them in distress. We've taken them saying, you really don't know this problem you have. Then we make them aware of the problem and they're in distress, and then we bring them through that distress to understand that there's a tractable approach to getting at solving the problem. And the way that we do this, the serious funnel, we have about $20 million marketing spend. We've got about 40 people in marketing. They really purely focus on demand generation into the Global 2000. They work with a team of BDRs that are about 20 in size, and an inside sales force of 40 in size, and they're very tightly aligned. Of course, we take a metrics-driven approach and blah, blah, blah. But it's not just blah, blah, blah. Because it's only 2,000 accounts, we can work with tools like Demandbase and Marketo to say, all right, we can pinpoint how this account is coming along. And then we have very tight conversations. The pitch catch that has to occur between sales and marketing really gets down to identifying, there's only 2,000 accounts in the Global 2000, and tracking those on an individual basis as we move through the funnel. By the way, if I can just go back, the biggest mistake we've always made in the past was just seeing how much was going in the top of the funnel. And that's, you can fool yourself into a false positive of thinking things are going well, and then marketing starts to determine that they're doing their job, sales isn't doing their job. The linkage that we've provided in the past year is to create connectivity between anything that goes in the top and how it comes through the process, and qualifying out a lot of things that look like opportunities but in fact are not. And we really try to walk the prospect through a journey. We had a large international bank this fall. We generally have about a 9 to 12-month sales cycle. This last fall, we had a large international bank that we saw that came on and looked at this, one of the white papers here about getting started in AppSec. And then we nurtured them into a webinar and through a proof of value, because we've found that when we get to demonstrate our technology, we win 82% of the time. So the key is to get to those demonstrations, and that's really about weeding through the funnel. I can tell you right now, I'm a great prospect for every one of you. If you can help me with my problem of generating more revenue, I want to hear from you. But like, make it resonate. You just heard my pitch, and it's easy to find out more at Veracode.com. The other thing I'd tell you is that y'all have software companies, and you're wide open to breach. It'd take me 5 minutes to break in, 5 minutes. And you're not going to get to sell to American Express. You're not going to get to sell to JP Morgan or GE, because they're demanding more of their software companies, and would be most happy to help you. Thanks for listening.
So as Andrew said, I run marketing for a venture capital firm based in Boston called OpenView, and our primary focus is software companies at the expansion stage. Before that, I ran global content for ExactTarget. We had a team of 12 basically doing top-of-the-funnel content for 6 countries, and we did that over a 3-year period of time, over 2 acquisitions, an IPO, and an eventual acquisition of Salesforce for $2.7 billion, and then integrating into Salesforce. And what I want to try to do is take all those learnings over that 3 years of us slogging through content and top of the funnel, and what I wish the C-suite would have said to me as a practitioner, and what I've learned from our portfolio companies over the past year, and distill it down into 30 slides in about 8 minutes. So if you guys are good with that, we're going to start. But the most important thing in my life is my son, as a father. He's 2 weeks old. This is Caden. He's available for brochure shoots and TV spots. You guys are open to it. But usually when I'm talking about this stuff, I always start with another baby, which is Louis C.K. If you guys are familiar with Louis C.K., we have 8 minutes, but 2 minutes of it is video, so bear with me here.
Everything is amazing right now, and nobody's happy. Like, in my lifetime, the changes in the world have been incredible. When I was a kid, we had a rotary phone. We had a phone that you had to stand next to, and you had to dial it. Yes. Do you realize how primitive? You're making sparks in a phone, and you actually would hate people with zeros in their numbers because it was more. It's like, oh, this guy's got 2 zeros. Screw that guy. Why do I want to? And then if they called and you weren't home, the phone would just ring lonely by itself. And then if you wanted money, you had to go in the bank for when it was open for like 3 hours. You had to stand in line, write yourself a check like an idiot. And then when you ran out of money, you just go, well, I can't do any more things now. Right. I can't do any more things. That's it, yeah. That was it. And even if you had a credit card, the guy would go, ugh, and he'd bring out this whole shunk, and he'd write, cut. You'd have to call the president to see if you have any money. And
it's all true, kids. You had to call the president, yeah. It was ridiculous.
Yes.
Do you feel that we now in the 21st century, we take technology for granted.
Well, yeah, because now we live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots that don't care, because this is what people are like now. They got their phone, and they're like, it won't. Give it a second. It's going to space. Can you give it a second to get back from space? Is the speed of light true? It's true. I was on an airplane, and there was internet, high-speed internet on the airplane. That's the newest thing that I know exists. And I'm sitting on the plane, and they go, open up your laptop, you can go on the internet. And it's fast, and I'm watching YouTube clips. I'm in an airplane. And then it breaks down, and they apologize, the internet's not working. The guy next to me goes, this is bull. Like, how quickly the world owes him something.
Yes.
He knew existed only 10 seconds ago.
Right.
I love that clip, because that last sentence, how quickly the world owed him something he knew existed only 10 seconds ago, and that's marketing, right? That is what we're trying to do as marketers. And so when we're talking about what's next, I think it's important to look at trends, but it's also important to look at what's now, what you should be doing now, how you should be structuring now in terms of content, in terms of demand gen, in terms of everything we're trying to do as marketers. And it starts with a couple things. The first thing is building the right team. I truly believe that marketing right now, the way that we're structured as an organization, and this can be different. This is different in every company, but this is the normal model that I've seen. It's antiquated. It is not right. When we're talking about marketing, we're usually talking about operations and creative. Let's do some high-level campaigns. Let's have marketing automation nurture those. But I do think that we need to move from a marketing team to a go-to-market team. And that's really marketing being combined with BDR and SDR, all in one. And it's really understanding that the go-to-market is the most important thing that you can do as a company. And you can restructure this any way that you want. If I had a perfect world, going back to ExactTarget, this is how I would restructure the marketing team and actually understand what data is driving the content and what customers are driving what we're doing, because it's the most important thing in the world. And then you have dotted lines to the other successful teams that you need in order to be successful: product, customer success, corporate sales, and support. And from a software perspective, the most important dotted line, in my opinion, is product. Second is customer success. I think more often than not, we're going to market with high-level ideas that don't apply to the actual customers that you have. And actually understanding the personas behind your content is extremely important, and I think product can help lead that. Because thought leadership, this is the second idea, thought leadership is not about you, it's about your customer and your customer's customers. When we were trying to figure out what to do at ExactTarget, we did not have a thought leadership team. We didn't have evangelists. We didn't have a content marketing team. This was January 2012. We decided that we needed to do 3 types of high-level research: peer-based research, database research, and primary research. And so I'm going to go through each of these and give you the examples. The primary research is where we started. That was basically trying to understand our customer's customer. How does a Japanese consumer use a mobile phone? How does a UK consumer use Twitter? How do people shop in Sears, or the top 10 retailers in the country? Sears is not the best example of that. My apologies. I don't even know where Sears came from. I can't remember. Never mind. So it was actually trying to understand, and that was our thought leadership angle. We know why people use email. You should buy us for email. And then we figured out that they wanted that, but they also wanted peer-based research. How can we talk to other marketers and try to figure out what their benchmarks were against email, against social, against mobile, against digital advertising, everything we were offering as a platform. And so we went out and we did primary research. I went and hired a VP of research from Walker Research in Indianapolis to run our research team. She was a data scientist, and she constantly was being involved in these customer groups so that we got benchmark data and we got peer-based data. And then we found out that they want peer-based, but they also want benchmark data that has to do with the data sets that we had. And this is where we went wrong at ExactTarget when it came to our research. In our contracts with our customers, we actually weren't able to even use their data for marketing purposes, even if it was anonymized. And so any software people out there, if you're looking at your contract, make sure you have the ability to use your own data Gap was sending 2 million emails a day out of our platform, and we couldn't use that data to create a benchmark for other retailers. We did do some of it, but what we found was that was the most important thing, and we were getting beat by other vendors that were sending 40 emails a month instead of our 20 billion. So we missed the mark there. But when it comes to thought leadership, that's where we hit our stride. And when we were producing content in the 6 countries, we realized, let's do primary research over all 6 of those countries, translate those reports, and then every country will have their own demand gen model. And what we found within the last year of doing this, we drove 15 million in marketing qualified pipe, 1.5 million of that closed. Qualified pipe closed out of the top of the funnel content team, and 80% of our press mentions as a company. Keep in mind, this was during, we bought 2 companies, we IPO'd, and we were bought by Salesforce. 80% of our press mentions were based off of our primary research because we spent time trying to understand the customer and the customer's customers. But the one thing that we did find was that all of this thought leadership, and this is the 3rd lesson, all this thought leadership was not being called upon by the BDR team. The BDR team was getting all of these leads, and they weren't calling upon them because they didn't understand what was in the report. I was sending them the report saying, hey, you guys should read this. The report was 40 pages long. They were not going to read it, right? And so they weren't calling on it, so they weren't being passed, and this was before we had gotten into the marketing automation and nurturing as well. So we started doing internal activation. And the dotted line has to do with every single point in your company, every single person needs to understand why you're doing content. They need to understand what's in the content that you're producing, so no matter who they are, they can talk about what you're doing from a thought leadership perspective. I don't care if they're an engineer, I don't care if they're customer success or customer support, they need to understand what you are doing from a content or demand gen perspective, because that will help in the sales process. Internal activation of your content is almost more important than external, because those internal teams are actually in front of your customers for upsell more often than the field sales might be in front of new customers. So what we did was we created an internal activation kit which had a PowerPoint deck for the relevant data points so they could put it in their sales pitches, call scripts for the BDR team, product data sheets corresponding with the deliverable. So we lined product marketing up with the actual thought leadership. We had the actual deliverable and then a single-page snapshot of the most relevant things that had to do with our personas. So if somebody was calling on a CMO that just downloaded the state of marketing and they were a mid-tier retailer, the BDR knew what to talk about because they actually were in tune with what that persona wanted. The 4th thing, which I don't think we do enough of as content marketers or as marketers in general, is obsess over unit economics with your business. And this is more than just the metrics that we measure on a daily basis, and this is just some of them, right? You can have a list of 500 if you want. It's really digging deep in the company and actually understanding what drives growth beyond the marketing side of metrics. What drives the unit economics of a business, because we must move from numbers keeping score to numbers that drive better actions. This is my favorite quote. I've used it for 3 years. I heard it in a retail conference a long time ago. We must move from numbers keeping score to numbers that drive better actions. And when we're digging deep, it's that we actually understand what happens after somebody becomes a customer, because it's almost just as important for marketing as trying to find new customers, especially in the software space. So digging deep and actually understanding unit economics is extremely important to the success of any content team. So this is what I'm going to leave you with. You are not marketers, founders of the CEO, demand gen or content experts. You're experience makers and managers. So the one thing that I learned through all of this is all the content we created, all the video we created, all the customer stories that we did, the one thing that reigned supreme was the experience that the customer was having with our brand. That's the only thing that made us relevant as a brand. It's the only thing that makes us relevant as a venture capital firm now. The experience is the only thing that makes you relevant as an individual in your career. And so while you're planning these content demand gen strategies, you have to remember that the experience of a new customer, of your current customer, is the most important thing that matters in this entire process. So keep that in mind as you're planning, and that's all I have for you guys. Awesome. Thank you.
So I want to jump right in and ask some follow-up questions. Bob, you came up the ladder on the sales side, and we've talked, over the past day here about the changing role, changing relationship with sales and marketing. You had sales and marketing alignment on your slide.
Yep.
Talk about how you've seen sales change over the past couple of years and how you see the role of marketing change.
Well, I mean, the truth is I haven't been a salesperson since I was 24. I've been a GM since then, but you know me as a salesperson because I do really only have two problems as a CEO, and it's revenue and all the other problems. And, you know, the fact is that there was a time when a salesperson was kind of a false poet, right? They would come and describe the company and what it could do, and they would bring along a sales engineer who would corroborate what was true and what wasn't true. And there was an old joke that the difference between a software salesperson and a car salesperson is that the car salesperson knew he was lying. You know, the software salesperson didn't know what they were talking about. And that's gone. The buyer does most of the buying now, right? Our salespeople are more often than not very technically qualified people that have an engineering background or sometimes a marketing background, but they're generally very smart and understand that the customer has already made their way through about a third of the cycle with us and our content and it being converted and incubated into interest before they show up. And what they're trying to do is help them transact with us. And as Kyle said, realize the experience, because our brand, our value proposition is one of interweaving people, process, and technology in a way that an HP or an IBM just can't. And when you think about our target customers, it's much easier, it's much safer to choose those companies, but it's hard to resist us when we're showing up presenting that capability as opposed to convincing you to do something, which I just think that those days are, we were talking before about command and control leadership is dead. So is the notion of persuasion. I don't think people are easily persuaded, nor should they be.
How about marketing? As a C executive, has your perception on expectations of marketing changed in recent years?
Well, I think about my experience as a CEO as being like three things: things that I'm good at that I like, things that I like that I'm not good at, and that's marketing, right? I'm not. So the key is what Kyle was saying, which is put a great team in place. We were fortunate to just get Brian Fitzgerald, who was the head of marketing for RSA, the preeminent security company, to be our CMO. And the key is to make sure that there's very tight alignment between sales and marketing, that it is about the actions, it's about the outcomes. So to us, it's about following the prospects that are in our pipeline today to understand where they came from and to make sure that content does a lot of the heavy lifting. The simplest way I can tell you this is I say to Brian, when he can pound on the table, because he's just started, and say, give me the money, don't hire salespeople, I will move the money to marketing in a second. In a second. Because the leverage that we get out of a demand base, the leverage we get out of a Marketo, the leverage we get out of an Aviso, the leverage we get out of Savo for internal activation, where we do these scorecards, is much greater than hiring somebody that costs a few $100,000 a year that's really just bringing the prospect along. So to the greatest extent possible, I mean, here's the simple view of it. Companies like Veracode sell their company for a simple reason. They can't afford their sales force. You can't afford, we can't afford to grow a sales force like IBM's, but we could leverage the hell out of marketing, and then you don't need a big sales force.
Is that true in the portfolio companies that you look at? How are they talking about sales and marketing differently than they had in the past?
It's really depending on the model. Like a transactional model, you don't need as many salespeople as an enterprise, and I apologize to Vidyard because I know you're here as well. I've been a client of Vidyard as well as Wistia. Wistia is a video-based enterprise sale that doesn't have any salespeople. And so there is modeling, and I think it's changing in terms of how content, how the experience of a brand, how events help play into selling a person no matter what part of the journey that they're on. But you know, we have a mixture of both when it comes to portfolio. There's some of our portfolio that have very large field sales teams and some that don't. It's really depending on the type of sale and the pricing and a whole bunch of different things. But we do see that the people with the strongest content side don't have as many on the sales side because there's such strong alignment between the two.
And that's
And
attractive.
it's more capital efficient.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
From your standpoint, Bob, you guys, the chart is very impressive how you've grown. When you talk to your board,
They're not impressed.
do they look at pipeline though? Are they saying?
They're
No,
never
no, no. They
impressed.
look at the opportunity. They look at the fact that every company is a software company. Their software wasn't developed with security in mind. We do more to button that up than anybody else. Why aren't we growing faster?
But they don't want to know the minutia of the metrics of, okay, show me how much you have in the pipeline and what you're going to convert. And
No. But what they want to know is how can you scale effectively,
Faster, or-
and that comes more through getting leverage out of marketing and the science of marketing and understanding what's working, doing more of that, and understanding what's not working and doing less of that. It's pretty simple, but it really does require that marketing does the heavy lifting, along with an inside velocity-based selling model. Versus, we want a small, elite field sales force to focus on the most complex transactions because we're asking to be deeply embedded with how companies build and buy software. This is important stuff. But you can't, it's really how do you get the leverage in the model? Because what we care about is not the growth, because it's a good business, it's growing, but how can we win this against very large technology companies? Because Kyle will be the first to tell you that the value creation for being first in a market greatly, greatly exceeds second place.
I would say from a board perspective that the boards that we sit on, we don't care necessarily about the pipe that's generated. We care about the churn. And that's why when I was talking about digging deep, it's really marketers need to understand what the payback period is, what the churn. If your pipeline is huge, but you have a 30% churn, you're not selling to the right people even though you're closing them. And so it's really important to look at those type of metrics even after the sale, because it will help you create better content and focus on better customers in the future.
And then you've touched on it, but you were only scratching the surface in some of those bigger companies. So is the cross-sell, upsell a big part for you going forward? Does marketing help drive that?
Just recently, it's a big opportunity for us, but you have to be careful not to, because there is such cross-sell, upsell opportunity, you could run the risk of fooling yourself into thinking that you're building a great business when you're really milking a small cash cow. Most companies don't do this. They have to do this. And if we get to them first, we know that they'll inherently expand. The inherent expansion from a customer is about 30% per year. So after, our renewal rate's around 90%, and then the business grows 30% from there inherently. So the key is to get new accounts.
Okay. Hey, Kyle, as we're here at this conference, Bob talked about some of the solutions that he's using that here. Do you guys, as the venture backing, do you encourage your companies to utilize these kinds of solutions? Do you feel like that they're...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we consult on it. I mean, we have an entire side of our venture capital firm that's 20 people that does consulting for our portfolio, and we consult on everything from HubSpot to Marketo to SalesLoft to Demandbase to Salesforce, Pardot, ExactTarget, rest in peace, Marketing Cloud. But we consult on all of it. And the marketing stack in general, I could spend an hour just talking about that, but really having 2 or 3 core tools that you use to drive marketing inbound as well as the communication between marketing and sales is extremely important.
Well, I thank you guys. I think this has been really insightful. I appreciate it. I hope you guys will stay and have a drink, and maybe people can pick your brain there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
everybody
you.
for hanging in.
Thanks, man. Kyle, it was great.